Millionaire CEO stuns everyone after shocking secret of homeless woman leaves her speechless. Nathan Gray stood on the sidewalk of New Haven, gazing at the city he had built his empire in. Skyscrapers loomed around him, casting long shadows while people hurried by, their lives rushing past in a blur of ambition and noise. He felt the familiar tightness in his chest. Wealth, status, success. He had it all. Or so it seemed. But deep within, insecurities clawed at his heart. Echoes of a broken childhood haunting him like restless spirits. But today, something felt different. A chill danced in the air, thick with mystery. His attention was pulled to a small commotion at the corner of the street. A circle of onlookers gasped, their faces a mix of shock and intrigue. Intrigued, Nathan stepped closer. Curiosity piqued. That's when he saw her. Leah. She sat on the ground, her clothing tattered and dirt-smudged, but still emanating a strange beauty. Her long, unkempt hair fell over her face, partially obscuring her sharp features, yet Nathan could see pain etched into the lines around her eyes. It was as if she held an entire universe of stories within her, drowning in shadows and regret. And then, with a voice like glass, she whispered something to the crowd, words that hung in the air. A faint murmur traveled through the crowd, rising like a wave. "You'll never believe me, but I'm more than just this." Nathan's heartbeat quickened. There was something about her. There was an intensity in her gaze that drew him in like a moth to a flame. She lifted her head, locking eyes with him, and in that moment, he felt a jolt of recognition. Something familiar and powerful that compelled him to step forward. "What do you mean?" he asked, barely able to keep the tremor from his voice. As if acknowledging his question, she continued, "I used to have everything. A family, a fortune. But they left me to rot." Her voice cracked, raw emotion spilling out like a shattered vase losing its contents. The crowd shifted uneasily. Could they sense the truth beneath her words? Gasps of disbelief mingled with whispers of disbelief and scandal. Nathan felt the icy grip of shock constricting around him. How was it possible? His mind raced. Fortune? Family? He could almost hear the rush of gears turning, the ticking of clocks reminding him of his own lost past. Suddenly, her eyes darkened, revealing a flicker of something deeper. Secrets trapped behind them. The promise of untold tales whispered temptingly into the void. The city's vibrancy faded as the world around them melted away. It was just the two of them now, wounded souls colliding. But then came a loud crack of thunder. The light drizzle turned to sheets of rain, the city erupting into chaos around them. The crowd scattered, voices drowned in the storm. Yet Nathan remained. He was at a crossroads. A faceless company lurked in the shadows, ready to pounce on any sign of weakness. But the urgency in Leah's eyes ignited something within him. Could her past be entwined with his future? Standing in the rain, drenched to the bone, Nathan faced a choice. Protect his polished facade, or help Leah uncover the truth that linked them together. His hands trembled, caught between despair and hope. The stakes were higher than he'd ever imagined. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important alert. Many subscribers have report. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And while you're here, drop that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every incredible person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Nathan stood there, the rain pouring down like a curtain of despair, his heart racing, battling a whirlwind of emotions. Leah's confession echoed in his ears, the weight of her words suffocating yet liberating. He felt pulled into her world, grappling with the chaos of their shared pain. But just then, a sudden flash lit up the sky. A blinding bolt of lightning struck nearby, followed by an ear-splitting crash. The ground trembled beneath him. In an instant, the crowd recoiled. People scattered like leaves in the wind, their faces marked with shock. Nathan stood frozen, watching as Leah clutched her arms around herself, shivering against the storm. And then, amidst the chaos, Nathan's eyes froze on a figure emerging from the shadows of the alley across the street. A man, dressed in a dark coat, his face obscured by the hood, stepped into the faint glow of the streetlight. As if drawn by some unseen force, Nathan's breath hitched in his throat. The man approached with a deliberate pace, eyes piercing through the rain, locking onto Leah. "Leah!" he shouted, his voice a mix of urgency and authority. Nathan's heart sank. The intensity in the man's voice held an unsettling familiarity. It struck a chord deep within him, chilling him to the bone. Leah's expression morphed from vulnerability to sheer terror. She stumbled back, eyes wide. "No, it can't be you. Why are you here?" the man demanded, his gaze flickering between them. The question hung in the air, charged with unspoken history, thick enough to cut. The crowd, now hovering at a distance, stood in a collective gasp, eyes darting between the three figures, sensing something dark unfolding. Nathan felt a lump in his throat, confusion clouding his thoughts. Who was this man? What past bound them together? "I told you to stay away," Leah cried, her voice breaking, cracking under the weight of old wounds. The rain blurred vision, but Nathan remained rooted, straining to hear, heart racing, desperate for more. "What's going on?" he whispered, stepping forward toward her, but the man raised a hand to stop him. "Don't!" The authority in the man's voice sliced through the air. Nathan instantly felt the sharp edges of his anger. "You don't know her. You don't know what she's capable of." The crowd swelled with whispers, confusion rippling through like a shockwave. "What does he mean?" someone asked, eyes wide with suspicion. Another murmured, "She's dangerous?" Nathan's mind reeled. The fragile connection he felt with Leah suddenly became entangled in shadows. For the first time, doubt crept into his heart. Was her past riddled with secrets beyond what she'd shared? "Leah, tell me the truth." Nathan pressed, fear heightening his tone. "What have you done?" Leah's eyes locked onto his, filled with a desperation that twisted painfully in his gut. "They were going to hurt you, Nathan. I did what I had to." A deafening clap of thunder erupted overhead, drowning out the murmurs as her words left the crowd stunned. They peered at her with renewed suspicion. Nathan felt his pulse thundering in his ears. Did she mean to protect him, or was this merely the tip of an iceberg he wasn't ready to face? In that heartbeat, everything shifted. Lurking beneath the surface were secrets that could shatter his empire, his life. One flick of fate had thrown them together, but was the path forward a road to redemption or ruin? And just like that, in the pouring rain, Nathan stood teetering on the edge of a truth that could change everything. Would he still reach for Leah, or pull back into his safe, polished world, now overflowing with uncertainty? The choice loomed heavy, and time felt suspended. The storm raged on, but the real tempest brewed between them. Nathan stood there, drenched and shaking, staring into Leah's terrified eyes. The storm raged around them, but the real storm brewed in the air. Her words echoed in his mind, sharp as the pouring rain. "I did what I had to." He couldn't process it, couldn't make sense of this chaos. The man in the dark coat stepped closer, his eyes like a storm cloud ready to unleash. "You don't understand, Leah," he said, voice low but commanding. "You're not safe here. Stop. Just stop." Leah yelled, her voice cracking under the weight of her fear. "You don't get to control me anymore." The crowd shifted uneasily, murmurs rising like the tremors of a distant quake. Nathan felt a pit forming in his stomach. Who was this man? What secrets tied him to Leah? And how deep did their history go? Suddenly, a blinding flash lit up the sky again, and Nathan squinted against the brightness. As the lightning struck, something, a woman, burst from the alley just behind the man in the coat. She rushed forward, nearly stumbling as she pushed through the growing crowd. "Sam," she screamed, her voice desperate and echoing. The name shattered the tension, slicing through the rain-soaked air. The man's eyes widened in shock, but Nathan felt a different kind of panic rising within him. He recognized her. Megan? The name tore from his lips. She was his childhood friend. The girl he thought had disappeared all those years ago, along with his childhood dreams and family ties. Megan's face was pale, her eyes wild with fear. "You have to listen. The past is coming for all of us." Leah looked between Nathan and Megan, as if trying to piece together a puzzle that no one had the straight edges for. "What are you talking about?" she gasped, stepping back, the fear spilling out into the crowd. "Things are not what they seem," Megan gasped, breathless. "We were all part of something bigger. You think you know who you are, Nathan? You've been living a lie." Time seemed to freeze. The rain fell heavy and consistent, but the words hung in the air, heavy with dread. What could she mean? His heart thundered. Questions flooded his mind, blurring into anger, confusion, and fear. "What lie?" he managed to choke out. He felt his world unraveling. "Your family. They were involved in something dark. I thought you deserved to live a normal life, away from it. But it's creeping back, Nathan." Leah's eyes darted between them, searching for sanity in the chaos. "What does this have to do with me?" Megan stumbled forward, grabbing Nathan's arm. "You don't understand. It's not just about you. It's about all of us." The storm clawed at the city, but the true storm was within their hearts. Nathan's mind reeled with the weight of Megan's words. He had always thought he was just a businessman, just a man trying to escape his past. But what was really haunting him? Beneath it all, there were realities he had buried deep, secrets too horrifying to confront. "Megan, stop! You're scaring Leah," Nathan shouted, anger mixed with desperation. But deep down, he felt a chill creeping in, that maybe Megan was right. Maybe their lives had intertwined in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. And then, as if summoned by the thunder itself, the man in the dark coat, Sam, exploded with anger. "You shouldn't have come back, Megan." His voice held an authority that sent chills through Nathan's spine. "You have no idea what you're unleashing." The crowd now stood frozen, transfixed by the swirling tension, hearts racing, breaths held. Everything felt poised on the edge of a knife. Secrets clawed for release, hearts pounded with dread. With each drop of rain, it became glaringly clear. The story they thought they knew was just the beginning. Nathan felt the ground shift beneath him. This storm was, without doubt, just the start. What had he unleashed? The air crackled with foreboding, and he could only wonder, could he save himself, Leah, and the remnants of a past he didn't yet understand? Nathan stood there, drenched and shaking, staring into Leah's terrified eyes. The storm raged around them, but the true storm brewed in the air. Her words echoed in his mind, sharp as the pouring rain. "I did what I had to." He couldn't process it, couldn't make sense of this chaos. The man in the dark coat stepped closer, his voice low but commanding. "You don't understand, Leah. You're not safe here." "Stop! Just stop!" Leah yelled, her voice cracking under the weight of her fear. "You don't get to control me anymore." The crowd shifted uneasily, murmurs rising like the tremors of a distant quake. Nathan felt a pit forming in his stomach. Who was this man? What secrets tied him to Leah? And how deep did their history go? Suddenly, a blinding flash lit up the sky again, and Nathan squinted against the brightness. As the lightning struck, something, a figure, burst from the alley just behind Sam. It was a woman, her face wild with terror. "Megan! Nathan!" she screamed, her voice thin and frantic, nearly lost in the storm's roar. Nathan felt a strange jolt in his heart. There was something familiar about her. "Isabel?" he breathed, recognizing his childhood neighbor, the girl who had always played in their backyard. He hadn't seen her in years, not since that day, the day everything shattered. "I can't believe you're here." She rushed towards them, eyes wide with an urgency that made the tension thick enough to cut. "You're in danger, all of you. They're coming." Before she could finish, the ground shook violently, as if the earth itself reacted to her words. The crowd gasped and stepped back, confusion blooming in anxious faces. "Who's coming?" Nathan shouted, trying to keep control. "What do you know?" "There's no time," Isabel cried, her eyes darting nervously. "Please, you have to listen, all of you." But before she could explain, another flash of lightning set the sky on fire, plunging the area into chaos. The power flickered, and just then, a chilling sound echoed, like the roar of a wild beast rising against the storm. The crowd turned, eyes wide, and Nathan felt a chill crawl up his spine. From the shadows of the alley, figures appeared, 3 of them, moving as one. Their dark silhouettes loomed nearer, faces hidden beneath hoods. Panic ignited within the crowd. "Run!" someone shouted, and people scrambled, heartbeats racing. "No, don't leave us!" Leah yelled, but it was too late. The panic spread like wildfire. "Nathan, look out!" Megan screamed, grabbing his arm just as he felt a presence behind him. He turned, a figure lunging forward, hands reaching out. In that split second, something unexpected happened. Isabel stepped in front of him, her face resolute. "No," she shouted, pushing Nathan aside. But just as she did, a blinding flash from above collided with the street, illuminating the scene in stark white light. When it faded, everything had changed. Isabel collapsed to the ground, but instead of blood or pain, her body shimmered with a strange, unsettling glow. The shock coursed through Nathan like ice. She wasn't just his neighbor, she was something else. "What are you doing?" Sam yelled, eyes wide in horror. Isabel looked up, pain etched in her features but mixed with clarity. "You have to know the truth," she breathed, her voice echoing like an omen. "I protected you all from this darkness." "From what?" Nathan's chest tightened. He felt dizzy, like the ground was slipping from beneath him. Before anyone could answer, the hooded figures stepped closer, their intentions unclear. The air crackled with energy. "You think we're here to hurt you?" one of them sneered, face momentarily revealed under the flashing lights. It was someone Nathan recognized, a familiar face from his past. The true nature of the situation unraveling before them, relationships, betrayals, buried truths, seemed poised to shatter everything. Nathan felt the world spin, realization dawning. What had he walked into? What did Isabel know? In that precise moment, everything flipped again. The storm overhead roared, bridging the chaos of the outside world with the turmoil within. "What's going on?" he managed to whisper. But the answer loomed like a dark shadow. It all felt like a nightmare clawing at the edges of reality. What if his past, intertwined with theirs, held secrets too horrific to face? In the rain-soaked streets, truth and illusion blurred. The storm continued to rage, but Nathan was left standing at the center of it all, grasping for understanding as the ties of fate pressed down around him. Would he break free or collapse under the weight of their shared history? The mystery was just unfurling. Nathan felt the ground shift beneath him. The rain was relentless, each drop a reminder of the chaos encircling them. Isabel lay on the pavement, her glow slowly fading, like a candle dimming as the storm raged. Panic bubbled within him, his heart a chaotic drum beating wildly against his chest. "Isabel, get up!" he shouted, but her eyes remained fixed on the sky, distant and unfocused. The crowd's murmurs morphed into a wave of anxious whispers, eyes darting between them. Nathan could feel the currents of fear swirling, tangling around them like invisible chains. "What's happening?" Leah gasped, her voice thin and wavering. She reached out, her hand brushing against Nathan's, grounding him for just a moment. "I don't know," he managed, voice thick with confusion as he knelt beside Isabel. "I don't understand." But before anything else could take shape, A dark shadow loomed over them. The figures stepped closer, the air crackling with an ominous energy. Sam crossed his arms, eyes narrowing with fierce intensity. "You have no idea what you've all stumbled into," he growled, every syllable dripping with hostility. "You need to tell us," Megan urged, voice shaky but forceful. "Everything's unraveling. We can't just stand here." The crowd stirred, fear growing with each passing second. There was something unspoken between Sam and Isabel, something heavy that filled the air. Just then, another bolt of lightning lit the sky, illuminating the faces twisted in fear and confusion. And then, without warning, a deafening roar split the sounds of the storm. It vibrated through the ground. A feral scream that echoed in their bones. Nathan spun around, eyes wide, looking for the source. The hooded figures stirred, their faces now a mask of dread. "Run," one of them shouted, but it wasn't directed at them. It was a warning. "What is happening?" Nathan cried, adrenaline pumping. Just as he turned to face Isabel again, a flash of movement caught his eye. A streak of black rushed past, barreling toward them through the rain. It was massive, a creature of nightmares, gnarled and dark. Before he could process it, the beast lunged forward, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity. "Stay back," Sam yelled, rushing protectively in front of Leah and Nathan. But there was no stopping what was coming. In the chaos, Isabel let out a gasping breath. "Get away from me!" she screamed, a desperate plea that rang through the thundering night. With a sudden surge of light, the glow surrounding her intensified. It wrapped around her like a shield, expanding outward and illuminating the terrified faces surrounding them. But that glowing aura twisted. It flickered and pulsed, morphing into something dark. Instead of protecting her, it seemed to summon the beast, drawing it closer. "Isabel, no!" Nathan shouted, reaching for her. But the barrier became inescapable. The beast howled louder, charging toward the light, and Nathan's heart dropped into his stomach. And then, in an instant, it broke through. The light shattered, exploding outward in a blinding flash. Screams erupted. Nathan shielded his eyes, tearing his gaze away. When he opened them again, everything had changed. The crowd was gone, vanished into thin air. Sam, Megan, and Leah stood frozen, confusion and fear etched onto their faces. But Isabel was not where she had been. In her place stood a woman, tall and fierce, eyes burning with an intensity that pierced through the rain. She wasn't just Isabel anymore. She was something far more powerful. "What have you done?" Sam's voice quivered, uncertainty creeping in. "Who are you?" The woman smiled, a haunting yet familiar expression that sent chills down Nathan's spine. "I'm here to tell you the truth," she said, voice echoing with authority. "But it won't be easy to accept. Your lives depend on the secrets buried deep within your past." Suddenly, Nathan understood that everything he thought he knew was a facade. Isabel wasn't just his neighbor, she was a part of something monumental. All those hidden truths were finally clawing their way to the surface. And in that moment, as the storm raged on, Nathan felt an overwhelming sense of dread. They were tangled in a web too intricate, too dark to comprehend. What if, in seeking answers, they unleashed something far worse than they ever expected? The air buzzed with an unsettling promise of revelations yet to come. The storm crackled around them, thunder rumbling low like a beast waking from a slumber. The woman before Nathan, Isabel, held a power he could scarcely comprehend. Her eyes sparkled with an unearthly light, and for a brief, fragile moment, the world stood still, cocooned in silence. But just as Nathan opened his mouth to speak, a chilling scream pierced the air. It wasn't from the storm, it came from the alley. Everyone turned, tension tightening like a noose. Leah's face paled further. "What was that?" she gasped, stepping closer to Nathan, seeking refuge. "Stay back," Sam ordered, hands clenched at his sides, fear and authority battling in his voice. Then the shadows writhed and twisted, a shape emerging from the darkness that sent a jolt of dread through the air. A figure stumbled forward, swaying unsteadily, and just like that, everything changed. Nathan squinted through the rain, heart pounding louder with each step the newcomer took. The crowd remained frozen in a hazy mix of awe and terror. As the figure drew nearer, recognition slammed into Nathan. It was his brother, Jake, the one he thought had died years ago in a tragedy that shattered his childhood. Jake, unscathed but tainted with a darkness that turned his eyes to obsidian. The shock unraveled him, threads of disbelief tangling into confusion. "Jake," Nathan whispered, each letter a struggle. His voice cracked like the thunder above. But instead of joy, fury awakened in Jake's gaze. "You shouldn't have come back, Nathan," he seethed, each word dripping with venom. "You're exactly like them." "What are you talking about?" Nathan's heart raced, the world spinning on its axis. He felt Leah's grip tighten on his arm, her fear wrapping around him like an ice-cold vice. "You think you know the truth," Jake continued, but advancing closer, shadows pooling around him like a shroud. "You were never the innocent one. None of us were. It was all part of their plan to keep us in the dark." "Stop!" Isabel's voice trembled, desperation clawing at her words. "We need to focus on what's coming, not fight among ourselves." "Focus on what?" Jake spat, eyes blazing. "What do you know that I don't?" Nathan trembled with confusion, his mind racing back to old memories, heartbreak and chaos, scenes of a life interrupted. Everything came rushing back, overlapping. His family, the night his brother had vanished, the screams that echoed through their home. And then, in the midst of the storm, a blinding flash erupted once more. It lit the space around them, illuminating secrets so deeply buried it felt like an earthquake of revelations. The air pulsated with a heartbeat that wasn't theirs, and then it all began to unravel. Suddenly, like beads on a string breaking, Isabel's glow surged outward, enveloping Jake and then shifting focus entirely. The rain flickered and sparkled under its radiance. It was as if she unleashed something long contained, and in the next instant, the ground trembled violently, causing everyone to stagger. The figures that had been lurking at the edges of the alley now moved, chaos ripping forth. Nathan felt an overwhelming pressure, fear clawing at him as he shouted, "What are you doing? Get back!" But Isabel extended a hand, shaking her head. "I can help, but only if we all confront the truth." In that heartbeat, everything shook as a guttural roar swept through the alley, shaking the ground beneath their feet. It was unlike anything they had heard before, powerful, full of anger. Just then, the world unraveled. The rain fell harder, but it wasn't just rain. It was tinged with an eerie light, and Nathan realized it wasn't water at all. It was a substance, dark and viscous, pooling at their feet. Fear rippled through the crowd, whispers rising into panicked cries. "Run!" Sam yelled, turning for escape. But it was futile. The shadows around them moved faster than they could react. "No, don't leave me!" Leah cried, holding Nathan tighter. Nathan's heart thundered in his chest. He stood frozen in place, aware that in a heartbeat, everything he thought he knew had just changed. The storm raged, shadows twisted, and in that moment, relationships shattered and bonds frayed. A gut-wrenching truth began to unfurl before them, one that left him reeling. Maybe he hadn't just lost his brother. Maybe he wasn't who he thought he was. The grip of destiny tightened, and Nathan understood he was at the crux of something much darker than he dared to consider. Everything was falling apart, and with an unmistakable sense of despair, he felt the world slip away beneath him. Where would this take him next? The question lingered in the air, heavy with dread and uncertainty. Nathan felt the ground shift beneath him. The rain was relentless, each drop a reminder of the chaos encircling them. Isabel lay on the pavement, her glow slowly fading, like a candle dimming as the storm raged. Panic bubbled within him, his heart a chaotic drum beating wildly against his chest. "Isabel, get up!" he shouted. But her eyes remained fixed on the sky, distant and unfocused. The crowd's murmurs morphed into a wave of anxious whispers, eyes darting between them. Nathan could feel the currents of fear, swirling, tangling around them like invisible chains. "What's happening?" Leah gasped, her voice thin and wavering. She reached out, her hand brushing against Nathan's, grounding him for just a moment. "I don't know," he managed, voice thick with confusion as he knelt beside Isabel. "I don't understand." But before anything else could take shape, a dark shadow loomed over them. The figures stepped closer, the air crackling with an ominous energy. Sam crossed his arms, eyes narrowing with fierce intensity. "You have no idea what you've all stumbled into," he growled, every syllable dripping with hostility. "You need to tell us," Megan urged, voice shaky but forceful. "Everything's unraveling. We can't just stand here." The crowd stirred, fear growing with each passing second. There was something unspoken between Sam and Isabel, something heavy that filled the air. Just then, another bolt of lightning lit the sky, illuminating the faces twisted in fear and confusion. And then, without warning, a deafening roar split the sounds of the storm. It wasn't from the storm. It came from the alley. Everyone turned, tension tightening like a noose. "Run," one of them shouted. But it wasn't directed at them. It was a warning. "What is happening?" Nathan cried, trying to keep the fear from spilling into his voice. Just as he turned to face Isabel again, a flash of movement caught his eye. A streak of black rushed past, barreling toward them through the rain. It was massive, a creature of nightmares, gnarled and dark. Before he could process it, the beast lunged forward, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity. "Stay back!" Sam yelled, rushing protectively in front of Leah and Nathan. But there was no stopping what was coming. In the chaos, Isabel let out a gasping breath. "Get away from me!" she screamed, a desperate plea that rang through the thundering night. With a sudden surge of light, the glow surrounding her intensified. It wrapped around her like a shield, expanding outward and illuminating the terrified faces surrounding them. But that glowing aura twisted. It flickered and pulsed, morphing into something dark. Instead of protecting her, it seemed to summon the beast, drawing it closer. "Isabel, no!" Nathan shouted, reaching for her, but the barrier became inescapable. The beast howled louder, charging toward the light, and Nathan's heart dropped into his stomach. In that instant, the glowing light exploded, sending waves of energy radiating outwards. The ground shook violently, and a sound like shattering glass filled the air. Nathan staggered back, falling hard onto the wet ground. As he looked up, he saw a silhouette within the flare of light. It was a woman, a mirror image of Isabel, but her eyes burned with a fierce energy. "I am not who you think," she declared, voice ringing out with power. "Isabel, what are you doing?" Sam shouted, confusion swirling like the winds around them. But just then, the beast halted, frozen, as if some invisible force held it in check. The shadows surrounding them quivered and screamed, contorting into wretched shapes. Then, slowly, everything shifted. The glow faded, and in that fading light, a memory emerged. Nathan blinked hard, trying to grasp what he was seeing. The shapes surrounding him were not creatures. They were echoes of his past, faces he thought he'd buried long ago. And standing among them was someone he hadn't expected to see. His mother. "Mom?" His voice cracked, disbelief washing over him like the rain. You were gone." But she didn't respond. Instead, her gaze turned to Isabel, and he saw an expression that twisted his heart into knots. "I had to protect you. I wanted to shield you from the truth," the glowing woman explained. Her voice shimmered as if countless souls whispered alongside her. "But the time has come. You must remember, who you really are. The shadows hissed as the realization struck, sending a shockwave through Nathan's mind. The storm roared louder as memories clawed their way back, ugly and raw. He'd been lied to. Everything he knew about his life was a carefully spun facade. With horror mounting, he realized that maybe he was not a victim. Maybe the darkness that long shadowed his family wasn't just a past he'd tried to escape. It was an inheritance. And just like that, the world got unstable, spinning out of control. His family was tangled in something far more sinister than he could have conceived. As the storm raged on, Nathan was left standing on trembling ground, grappling with a truth that threatened to shatter everything. But just as he thought he might understand, a deafening roar filled the alley again. The shadows shifted violently, and everything plunged into chaos once more. Nathan knew that he had to make a choice. Would he embrace this horrifying legacy or fight against it? In that moment, he stood on the edge, ready to fall into a past he never wanted to confront. Nathan felt the storm rage around him as the terrifying roar echoed through the alley. His heart hammered in his chest, a mix of fear and confusion swirling within him. Isabel had transformed, but the situation was slipping out of control. The air thrummed with tension, shadows moving like restless spirits. "Isabel," he shouted, desperation clawing at him. "What's happening?" But she didn't answer. Instead, her attention was fixed behind Nathan, her eyes wide with alarm. He turned, just in time to see the looming figure of the beast charge toward them. "Step aside," Sam yelled, pushing forward, but Nathan felt rooted to the spot. The beast surged, eyes gleaming with a fierce hunger. In that moment, Isabel's form flickered, and she began to emit a blinding light that filled the alley. It pulsated, as if it were alive, and could swallow the darkness. The beast halted, howling in rage and confusion, but the ground felt unstable, shaking beneath Nathan's feet. And then, a deafening crack echoed through the night, an explosion that tore through the air. A blinding light swept over them, and everything went white. Nathan squeezed his eyes shut against the brightness, throwing up his arms to shield himself. He felt heat wash over him, piercing through the cold rain. Just when he thought he might burst with the pressure of it all, darkness swallowed him whole. When he finally opened his eyes again, he found himself sprawled on the wet pavement, breathless and disoriented. The storm still roared around him, but something had shifted. Something was different. He blinked, trying to focus on his surroundings. The crowd had vanished, leaving only his core group: Leah, Sam, Megan, Isabel. The beast was gone. The air was still thick with an unsettling tension, yet the threat felt dimmed somehow, like a distant memory. Nathan sat up, rubbing his eyes, trying to understand the sudden change. The fear that had gripped his heart began to loosen, but confusion remained. What just happened? Then, from the shadows of the alleyway, a figure stepped forth. It was different this time. Nathan's breath hitched as he recognized her. "Mom?" he whispered, shock weaving through his voice. But it was not the tender embrace he had longed for. This version of his mother was frayed. Her eyes shimmered with sadness and regret. "You shouldn't have called me," she murmured, voice wavering. "You have no idea what you've awakened." "Awakened," Nathan echoed, glancing around at the others, searching for confirmation. "What do you mean?" She took a step forward, but Isabel interjected. "You have to let us protect you. We're still in danger." The woman shook her head with a heavy sadness. "No one is here to protect you. Not anymore." A chill ran down Nathan's spine. The words hung heavy in the air, casting a darkness that crept back into his heart. "What are you saying?" And just as he thought the answers might unfold, the earth trembled again. But this time, it wasn't just fear, it was anger, an energy that couldn't be contained. "Don't!" Isabel shouted, raising a hand, as dark tendrils began to slither forth from the ground, crawling toward Nathan. "You have to stand back." And with one final scream, the shadows erupted. In a flash, They surged forward, engulfing everyone. When Nathan opened his eyes again, the world around him had shattered into a bleak reality. The others all stood before him, but something was wrong. Something was terrifyingly wrong. Leah? He stumbled back, horrified. The girl he had loved, the one who had been fighting alongside him, now stood with her head tilted unnaturally, her eyes hollow and lifeless. "Leah!" Sam's voice rang out in horror, but she didn't respond. "Who?" Nathan gasped. "We've lost her." Isabel's voice cut through the chaos, filled with a sorrow that felt like a weight crashing down. "You've awakened something terrible, and the truth is more twisted than you can imagine." The air grew thick, heavy with despair, as Nathan's heart plummeted. Now he felt the truth ripple through him. The ties that bound them weren't just rooted in their pasts. They were interwoven with shadows darker than he ever expected. And just like that, everything he thought he knew splintered. Who were these people, really? What had become of Leah? The storm continued to howl, but the real tempest raged within him as questions ignited. What did Isabel mean by lost her? They all stood there, trapped a web of uncertainty, teetering on the edge of chaos. The air was thick with confusion, and Nathan's heart pounded in his chest. He couldn't take his eyes off Leah, now a hollow shadow of herself. Isabel stood beside him, glowing and confusing. Something wasn't right. But it felt like the ground was slipping under him. "Leah?" he whispered, fear coiling in his stomach. Without warning, the sky cracked open again, thunder booming like a warning bell. And that's when it happened. A blinding flash filled the space, and a surge of energy swept through them, knocking Nathan back. He fell hard, hitting the wet ground, and felt the breath leave his lungs. Then, in a heartbeat, everything changed. A piercing scream cut through the chaos. It was an awful sound, a cry tinged with pain that made Nathan's blood run cold. He scrambled to his feet, eyes sweeping across the alley as the shadows seemed to pulse, almost alive. "Isabel, what's going on?" he shouted, but there was no time. A dark swirl of shadows converged, forming a whirlwind of chaos, and from that chaos, a figure began to emerge. Heart racing, he squinted through the swirling darkness. The figure took shape, a woman, tall and fierce, with flowing hair that danced like flames in the storm. Nathan's heart dropped as he realized who it was. "Mom?" He barely managed to breathe her name, shock locking his body in place. But this wasn't the tender mother he had lost. This was someone fierce and powerful. The look in her eyes felt regretful, yet authoritative. "You've all awakened something you weren't meant to," she spoke, voice steady but laced with urgency. "The storm called you here. You're all connected to the darkness." The group gasped collectively, the weight of her words sinking in like stones in the water. "What darkness?" Sam demanded, his voice filled with a mix of anger and desperation. Before anyone could respond, the ground shifted violently again. A shadow, big and looming, burst forth from the swirling chaos. It moved fast, lunging toward them with terrifying speed. It was different from before, more grotesque, eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. "Run!" Nathan shouted, but his legs froze, caught in disbelief. Isabel stepped forward, arms outstretched, and the light around her flared again. But this time, her glow wasn't just defensive. It seemed to reach out, almost beckoning the beast. "No," Isabel cried, her voice strained. "This is not what I intended." Everything happened at once. The beast pounced, and a loud crash echoed. Isabel's light flickered as the beast collided with it, sending shockwaves through the air. Nathan felt his stomach lurch. The world felt like it was unraveling. As the dust settled, he glanced around. The shadows began to retract, and with every inch they receded, something crystalline emerged from the ground. It was a box, shimmering with a strange light, pulsating with energy that seemed almost alive. "What is that?" Megan breathed, stepping closer, her eyes wide with awe. "I don't know," Nathan gasped, but he felt a connection, as if the box were linked to his very soul. Before he could process it, the box burst open. An explosion of light erupted, blinding him for a moment. When he could see again, he was no longer in the alley. The storm faded, replaced by an ethereal landscape, a place of mist and whispers, where time seemed to pause. Stunned, he turned to the others, but instead of the people he had known, he looked into the eyes of strangers. They were there, but they felt different, displaced. A motherly figure stood beside them, familiar, but seeping an aura of darkness that chilled him. "Welcome," she said, her voice rich with power. "You've come to reclaim your legacy." "Legacy?" Nathan echoed, confusion twisting his insides. "What are you talking about?" The woman smiled, an unsettling grin that sent icy fingers down his spine. "You're not just Nathan Gray. You're part of something far bigger. You don't remember, but you were one of us." The ground trembled, and he felt the weight of revelation crash over him like an avalanche. Everything he knew, everything he thought he had run from, was now spilling out, unraveling before him. What had he truly awakened? And as the pieces fell into place, Nathan realized with growing horror that he wasn't just facing a storm. He was standing at the center of a storm of his own making. Nathan felt a surge of energy in the air, a mixture of dread and hope. The ghostly form of his mother loomed before him, and the storm raged on. "You're not just any ordinary person," she said, voice trembling yet resolute. "You have the power to change everything." His heart raced. Could he really be connected to this darkness? Was it possible he could embrace a past he had bought buried? "What do I need to do?" he asked, desperation and determination evident in his tone. "You must let go of your fear," she urged, stepping closer. "Face your truth and share it with them." Her eyes flickered away for a moment, settling on Isabel, whose glow seemed to pulsate with uncertainty. "You need to remember who you are together." The ground shook again, but this time the shadows seemed hesitant, almost scared. Nathan could feel his friends' eyes on him, Sam, Megan, Leah. Each face a mirror of his own apprehension, but also a flicker of hope. He turned to them, grounding himself. "We can't run anymore. This storm will follow us." As if compelled by their collective resolve, Isabel stepped forward. "Together, we can light the way," she affirmed. "But you must confront the darkness inside you." The group exchanged determined glances. With a deep breath, Nathan nodded. "We're in this together, whatever it takes." The shadows seemed to swirl, and he could feel an ancient power building around them. They joined hands, and in that moment, an electric energy surged through them. Uniting their fates, Nathan felt a weight lift. Memories flooded back, shards of his past piecing together into something brighter. Pain, betrayal, love, they all merged into a single truth, connecting them. "Let it break!" Nathan roared, feeling his voice rumble with renewed strength. "We will not be defined by our pasts." With that declaration, light erupted from their circle, illuminating the shadows. The beast howled, furious at the encroaching brilliance, but it began to retreat, seemingly weakened. The darkness howled in agony, energy crackling and swirling like a tempest. A warmth spread through Nathan's chest as he realized he was embracing his true self. Surrounded by friends, Leah, Sam, Megan, and Isabel, each witnessing the birth of their strength. This storm wouldn't have the final say. But even in their triumph, slight tremors remained. "We need to stay focused," Sam shouted over the din, eyes glistening with determination. The shadows might diminish, but they could return. And just as Nathan opened his mouth to reply, a final dark tendril lunged at them. With a swift motion, Isabel unleashed a blinding wave of light. The blast shattered what was left of the darkness, finally silencing the beast's roar. The storm began to break apart, clouds dissipating into a waning sky, revealing twinkling stars above. they stood together, breathless and alive, having faced what they thought they could never conquer. "We did it," Nathan whispered, glancing at each face surrounding him. Relief washed over them like the warm glow of dawn. As dawn approached, Nathan realized this was not a goodbye, but a beginning. They would face new challenges but would always have each other. "We'll rebuild." The storm may have unveiled darkness, but it also revealed their light. A lingering thought tugged at Nathan. Was his past truly behind him? As they turned to leave, he couldn't help but wonder if other shadows were waiting to be confronted. This is where we leave our heroes for now, but there are more stories to tell. Do you want to know what happens next? The mystery doesn't end here. You need to subscribe right now. Don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. Share this video immediately with at least 5 friends who need to know this outcome. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.